Good morning, everybody. It's 10:30, at least in the Netherlands. Welcome, everybody, to the sixth and final webinar. Today's session is titled "Examples for Nature-Based Solutions of Agriculture and Forestry." My name is Geert van der Meer, and I'm a regenerative agricultural expert at Renature. And at Renature, we connect and support farmers through research, knowledge, funding to help them transitioning from conventional farming to regenerative agriculture. And I'm today organizing together with IUCN, RVO, and Vrije Universiteit, the VU, Amsterdam. We are organizing this last webinar out of six. Before we dive into today's program, there are a few practical notes. Please introduce yourself in the chat. And as mentioned in the invitation, this session will be recorded. I will be the moderator and the timekeeper throughout the whole webinar. So for today's program, we will start with Maxime Eiselin from IUCN. His presentation is titled Making Nature-Based Solutions Work in Agriculture and Forestry. Second, Bayley from Delphy. He will discuss the climate resilience through nature-based solutions in agriculture. Third, Janna Fleur from Boat End will present Communities Regreen the Sahel, a landscape approach. And last, Ard Lengkeek from Solveig Earth and the Dutch international business. He will discuss agroforestry in Rwanda. After each presentation, we will have around 5 minutes Q&A. Please post questions, if you have them, in the chat, and make sure to rename yourself and also include the organization where you're working. And the most important rule for today is just please keep your microphone muted during the presentations. This is really important. And at the end of the session, we will be taking a few minutes for a very short poll. And then we are closing this final webinar. Today, the official opening will be done by Wenneke. So, Wenneke Borset.
Good morning. My name is Wenneke Bossart, and I'd like to welcome you all on behalf of RVO. This is our last webinar of the SDGP Knowledge Exchange Series. And this last webinar will be about nature-based solutions for agriculture and forestry. For RVO, this is a very important topic in promoting sustainable agriculture all around the globe. And a special thanks to our speakers of today. Two SDGP projects will be presenting, one from Rwanda with Ard from DiBcoop and one from Delphy in Uganda. They will both share their lessons learned, do's, don'ts, and experiences. And we also have a third project, not from SDGP, but from a very close related program, ARSA, Accelerating Food Security in Africa. And this project will present the lessons learned from the Sahel region in promoting nature-based solutions to promote reforesting and food security. Both ends will give this presentation. And of course, many thanks to IUCN, Renature, and Vrije Universiteit of Amsterdam for organizing this series of webinars and to share also their lessons and their experiences. I hope you have a very inspiring and insightful session today. Enjoy the session.
Thank you, Wenneke. So yeah, we can kick it off with Maxime from IUCN.
Thank you,
Maxime, are you?
Geert.
Yeah,
Yes,
great.
I'm here. Thanks. Welcome. My name is Maxime Eiselin, Senior Expert, Nature-Based Solutions. So it's a pleasure to give you the keynote on how to make nature-based solutions work in agriculture and forestry. In this keynote, I will provide you the definition and the best practices of a high-quality nature-based solution. And afterwards, the SCGP projects that will be presented. We'll give you some real-life examples. Next slide. So, did you ever wonder if your work in sustainable agriculture or forestry is a nature-based solution? Well, then it is important to check the definition. So, IUCN defines nature-based solutions as actions to protect, sustainably manage, and restore natural or modified ecosystems that address societal challenges effectively and adaptively, simultaneously providing human well-being and biodiversity benefits. So that's a very long definition, but it contains a lot of important elements. Nature-based solutions are often described as no-regret options, providing benefits to people in a range of scenarios. And this definition is important because it's the most widely used definition globally, and it's recognized by many governments, NGOs, knowledge institutions, and businesses. And it also forms the foundation for the UN definition, on which several goals for nature-based solutions are formulated under the UN Climate, Biodiversity, and Desertification Conventions. We should consider, however, that the term nature-based solution is a trend today. It's an umbrella term. It's it's being framed as a new approach, while basically it's the same as ecosystem based approaches such as agroforestry, integrated water resources management, and sustainable land and forest management. Next slide. So, how does nature-based solutions fit in the different approaches on how we use nature? Well, we have nature-based solutions, and that's the main topic of this webinar, but we also have related approaches. We have nature-derived solutions, and those refer to conventional engineering projects enhanced by ecological components of which nature is playing a minor or complementary role. And an example of this is coastal protection with sand nourishment. This is an example from West Africa in the picture. And then on the right side, you also have nature-inspired solutions. So these refer to technological or engineered products inspired by nature, such as biotech or biomimicry. And it's important to differentiate between these three approaches because nature-based solutions are often misunderstood. And to create a common understanding of what is a real nature-based solution, IUCN developed the global standard for nature-based solutions. Next slide. So this is the cover of the standard. It can be used by practitioners in the agriculture and forestry sector, and it's a user-friendly framework for the verification, design, and scaling up of nature-based solutions. In the right picture, you see an infographic, and that's important because it shows how a nature-based solution works. So on the top, you have an ecosystem approach, such as sustainable land management, done by organizations in the food and forestry sector. And in the middle, shows that these tackle societal challenges, such as improving food security and economic development. And on the bottom, we see that this results in benefits for both human well-being and biodiversity. Next slide. So the backbone of the standard are 8 criteria, with each having indicators, in total 28 indicators. And these criteria can be used to optimize your nature-based solution. If you meet all the 8 criteria, then you can really state that you have a true high-quality nature-based solution. The criteria are that it needs to tackle a societal challenge. Secondly, the design of the nature-based solution covers the right landscape or seascape scale to secure ecosystem services. Thirdly, the nature-based solution results in a biodiversity net gain. Fourthly, the NBS is economically viable. Fifthly, nature-based solutions are based on inclusive and empowering governance processes. Sixth, nature-based solutions equitably balance trade-offs between their multiple goals and provision of multiple benefits. 7, NBS are managed adaptively based on evidence. And lastly, they are sustainable and mainstreamed within an appropriate jurisdictional context. Well, this is of course a lot of information, and you can look it up in the standard for more background. Next slide. So this was just a keynote, an opening to set the scene and to create a common understanding of what a nature-based solution is. We can conclude with 2 points. There is a widely accepted definition and best practices exist, and it is the nature-based solutions are often used also by the private sector. And agriculture and forestry can be a nature-based solution if they fit the 8 criteria of the standard. Thank you. I hope that I provided you with the basics of a nature-based solution. And if you want to know more about the approach, then you're welcome to reach out to IUCN.
Yes, thank you, Maxime. Yes,
Thank you.
your email will also be shared after the presentation by email. So yeah, if you have any questions, please reach out. So I was wondering, for the execution of the IUCN Global Standard, should you meet all the criteria for a project, or how does it work?
Well, you do not necessarily need to meet all the criteria before calling a project a nature-based solution, but this comes with an important nuance because it should not, you cannot claim to have a high quality nature-based solution until all 8 criteria are fulfilled. And the standard is not meant to be used as a binary yes or no assessment, but it is rather a continuous improvement framework to optimize your project.
Okay. Okay. Mm. Okay, interesting. And so, what is who can use all these IUCN Global Standards? For who is it applicable?
But, I think everyone can use it. It's publicly available, open access as well, and it's designed for a broad and inclusive use. It's being used by local actors, communities, NGOs, international companies, knowledge institutions. So basically, many type of stakeholders, governments, to help ensure that their project, is effective and sustainable.
Okay. Yeah. So that also means different kinds of scales of projects. That's
Yes.
yeah. Yeah. Okay. Let me quickly check if there are any other questions. No, I don't think so. I think we then going to proceed with the next presenter. Yeah, we can go to the next presenter. Can go to the next slide. So we see the opening slide for Bayley. Bayley is going to discuss the climate resilience of agricultural opportunities. Bayley, are you there?
Yes, I am here.
Yes? Okay, great.
Yes.
So I will give the mic to you.
Okay, thank you very much. Firstly, I'd like to thank the organizers for this platform to be able to present the activities that we've been doing. Present the activities that we've been doing, and thank you for the RVO for actually being able to do these activities. So What I'll be talking on today is climate resilience through nature-based solutions in agriculture. My name is Bayley Maidwell, and I'm an open field crop consultant and project manager at Delphy. So I think we can get straight into it. Next slide, please. So to just give you a little bit of a background on Delphy, we are a agri consultancy based out of the Netherlands, one of the largest, if not the largest in the world. We've got one of our motto is we make growers better, and one of our key selling points is that we're not attached to any product, so we can give the most unbiased opinion when it comes to our clients. Thank you. Next slide. Yeah. So just to give a background of Delphy's footprint in Africa, these are the countries we are currently present in and working in, but we are aiming to expand a lot more. Next slide, please. Okay, so now on to the actual presentation. So a bit about this Climate Smart add-on study. This is part of the SDGP program, Innovating the Ugandan Potato Value Chain, that Delphy has been running and leading in the Kigezi Highlands over the past four or so years, and it's actually coming to an end now. The whole approach of this project was from seed all the way to processing and everything in the middle. But the main aspect was with the farmers was building good agricultural practices into their cultivation systems. So the goal of this add-on was to really layer on the climate smart practices onto the good agricultural practices already in place and see what the results would be. Better resilience to climate, of course, but would there be better yield? Would there be better income to the farmer from this? So next slide, please. So when we came to the climate resilience through nature-based solutions, we really had to have a look at the area where this was running. Like I said, in the Kigezi Highlands, which is highlighted in red in the bottom and the top right picture. A hugely, really fertile area. This is because the parent material of the soils there is formed from volcanic action, but really fragile. The Kigezi Highlands is the most densely populated area in Uganda, and Uganda's got about 48 million people. So the pressure for land to do agricultural practices is really high, and you can see in the bottom right picture, actually, you know, wherever there's available land, agriculture is going on that, even if it's on a really steep slope. So this brings in a few issues like soil erosion that takes away the topsoil and leaving the farmer with it being bare. We've seen over the past few years some changes in the rainfall pattern and the temperatures, longer periods of no rain followed by very short periods of intense rain. So we asked ourselves, how can we help these farmers become a bit more resilient with a low-cost interventions? Next slide, please. So when it came to designing the actual the pilot study that we did, we had 10 demo plots across the Kigezi region consisting of only 125 square meters each. We chose the small size just so that we could really, you know, get the plots across the region and see what the results are from the different areas. Because this pilot was only over one growing season of the potatoes, we tried to identify what interventions can we put into place that are going to be the most effective and bring back the most results. So this was, we chose organic mulching and flower strips. So the organic mulch we sourced from wherever it was available. In the lower valleys, there's a lot of reeds and growth in the river that can be harvested. You can see in the bottom left and the bottom right picture that is harvested reeds for the organic mulch. But we also used like leftover stover from maize or millet, pine needles from under the pine trees that are growing in the area, because there's also quite a big forestry aspect in this region. And then on the flower strips, we chose three species of flowers: marigold, Elysium, and coriander. And these were all selected because they bring in beneficial insects that attack the pests on the potato plants. And the biggest pest that we had was aphids. When we designed the plot, we also looked at how we're going to structure, where we're going to put the flower strips. We came up with two designs, which was 0.5 meter and 0.5 meter on each of the edges of the plot, or 1 full meter within the middle of the plot. We didn't see too much difference in the results. I think maybe just because of the small area these demo plots covered, that if you put it on the sides or in the middle, it covers that whole little plot. One thing to add is that 3 of these demo plots were trialed directly under Delphy supervision at the ITC center that we set up through the SDGP program, and then the other 7 were conducted through one of our very good partners in Uganda, the Uganda National Potato Seeds Producers Association, with their farmers that are part of their organization. Okay, we can go to the next slide, please. So to go into a little bit of what we saw through the trial period, the mulch hugely beneficial when it came to keeping the soil moisture, the moisture in the soil. In some cases, we saw when we measured it, 39% in the climate smart plots compared to right next to it, 23%. I think this is a huge advantage. That's like mitigating these extreme events, extreme periods like very wet and very dry, where the plant itself goes through stress. The more moisture there is in the soil, the more nutrient uptake there's going to be, and then just providing a stable temperature throughout the period. You can see what we also observed is like on the erosion front, and I'll take you through on the next slide. There's some more pictures after this, but on the erosion front, we saw like our ridge height maintained. Sorry, do you mind just going back to the previous slide? Yeah, thank you. The ridge height was maintained, which is great for the potato production, of course. A nice big area for the tubers to grow out in with ease, and with that retained moisture inside there, the soil is really friable and soft. So there was no obstacles for the potatoes to grow. We saw an influx of beneficial insects like ladybugs, parasitic wasps. There was a lot of bees that came around these flowers, which is just better generally for biodiversity. But one thing that we did see as well is that the main objective was planting these flowers was to attract the beneficial insects. But a lot of the aphids that would normally be on the potato crops then moved across to these bug banks, if you want to call it that, the flower strips, where they really sat on the marigold mostly, which was interesting. So by attracting the beneficial insects and attracting the pests, this was brilliant for our potato production. And then below the soil, we also saw, a huge host of macro soil microbial action, these being earthworms, a lot of other smaller insects, burrowing insects, which really shows some good signs of healthy soil, healthy living soil, which is what we really need to strive for. If we go to the next slide. So here's a side-by-side comparison. On the left side, we have the normal gap demo plots, control plots that we used. And on the right side was the climate smart. You can see some of the mulch on the picture as well. But where I want to start off here is that these two images, or these two potato plantings were planted on the same day at the same time. And at this point of when I took these pictures, there had been a month of no rain. So you can really see that the potatoes on the left side, the crop has really been affected by that. Really looking wilted, not happy, not a lot of foliage. The soil's really dry, cracking. Shame, poor potatoes. But on the right side, it's like chalk and cheese. Lush, still green. I think these potatoes still had about 3 weeks to go until maturity. And in this last stage, this is where the potatoes really put on the most bulk towards the yield. So it's really important to have this healthy foliage, healthy soil. So very interesting to see a side-by-side comparison of it. That picture of the earthworm actually came from the right-hand side on the same day, a month after no rain. So yeah. Next slide, please. So ask the question, can nature compete with chemicals, conventional agriculture? We purposely, during this trial, did not use any chemical interventions in the climate smart demo plot to really see if there were results. And in the control gap plot, we did use some pesticides and fungicides. But what we saw, which really, where it all comes down to, it may be really good for the soil to implement these practices, good for the biodiversity, but what really matters for a farmer is the income back, and especially these small-scale farmers that don't have the biggest cash flow to go throughout the year. So on average, this was an average over the 10 demo plots. The control produced 307 kgs compared to the climate smart, which did 337 kgs. It might seem like a small difference, but this was 125 square meters. If we multiplied this out over a hectare, it would be quite substantial. The average tuber plant per plant, the average number of tubers per plant, I mean, these numbers are already very high. You don't really need to have this many, you don't really want this many tubers on a plant anyway, but the varieties that we were using are very old Ugandan varieties, which have these characteristics of having a high tuber count. But even though we saw a higher tuber count on the climate smart demos, we also saw a bigger average size, weight per tuber, which is great for the market, great for the farmer. It can fetch a better price. But what was really interesting is the quality that was also produced. So we not only increased the yield, but we also increased the quality, because compared to the control plot where 68% went to market, 77% went to market from the climate smart demo. So this quality and yield, coupled with the reduced costs of inputs, really made a big difference for the farmers themselves, and very happy to be part of the program that we're running in these trials. I think we can go to the next slide, please. So when it asked about the question about sustainability, I had a very lovely interaction with one of our host farmers in the field, and we asked what have they seen. They were very happy with the results that have been produced, especially comparing it back to like the conventional gap that we've been advocating for into the SDGP program. They had some concerns about the climate smart, and it was particularly about the extra costs of going and finding the stover, the labor that's required to move it to the plot. But then she came up with her own solution, which was like, I grow millets and maize. It's got a lot of biomass at the end of the day, at the end of the crop. So instead of burning this, I'm going to reuse this. So this is already creating a small circular economy within the farmer, the small-scale farmer itself. The seeds themselves for the plots for the flowers were quite, they were hard to come by, and they were also a little bit of expensive. They came from Kampala, which is about 400 kilometers away, but takes 8 to 10 hours to travel there by car. So it becomes quite difficult. So what we did throughout this program was advocate for like the seed saving of these flower seeds, collect them once they've dried up, and then create a little seed bank, which the farmer can draw upon, but also members within the community. When it came to like the advocacy for this climate smart practices, the farmers themselves were doing it, and it was interesting. Like I was saying, this is a very densely populated area. There's a lot of foot traffic going past these farms, and other farmers would see people growing flowers in the middle of their potatoes and think, yo, what is going on? You know, why are you doing that? So our farmers were able to now explain exactly why they're doing it, what benefits they bring, and also explain what they're doing with the mulch, which was very interesting. And it was a very good opportunity to educate people that not all insects are bad insects, and not all. Yeah, it was quite nice and good to see. If we can go to the next slide, please. So from the demonstration to the transformation, I think it carries on a little bit from the sustainability talk. The reason why we also conducted the 7 trial plots with farmers was to create the sense of ownership of this. Like, it's not a new thing. Mulching is not new. Flowers integration into crops is also not new, but it's really a new thing in this area. So we needed the farmers to take ownership of like this pioneering things that you can do for the crop to make it better. And that's exactly what happened. And, you know, enhancing the biodiversity in the area, not just good for the crops, but just good for everything. So it was very interesting results. I was pleased to be part of the trial, and it does definitely need some more research going in and like scaling up a bit more. But from the beginning, it's a good starting point. So I think if we go to the next slide. Yeah, that will be all from me. So thank you very much all for listening. It was great to be able to present this. Unfortunately, only 15 minutes, which can speak a lot more about this if it really came down to it. But I would invite anyone that is interested in it in contacting me, and we can discuss a bit more about it. So thank you very much.
Great. Thank you, Bayley. There's still quite some time left for our questions, and there are a lot of questions. I also must say that it's a super interesting topic because, at Renature, we're also doing comparable work. We try to design, and I see the regeneration comparison with the control plot, for example. So it's also evidence-based. So I'm also quite interested to reconnect again after this webinar. But let's go to the questions, because there were quite some. I will start on the top. So where can we find information about the GAP framework?
Well, the GAP framework is, I think if you just did a small Google search, it would come up very easily to see what GAP entails in the framework. And there's been a lot of work that gone into it. And if we look at some of the global certification, like Global GAP for exporting fruits and vegetables and stuff, that's Global GAP was built from the Good Agricultural Practice framework. And these good agricultural practices, include things like using certified seeds, proper fertilization, and IPM into the cropping system. So there's a lot out there, and there's a lot to go through. Yeah.
Thanks. That was actually asked by Facundo from IUCN. Actually, for the next questions, I will just ask the participants to open up their mic to get a bit more interaction. So, Johan, you had a question about the species of flowers.
Yeah, I wonder why did you choose marigold and the other species? Is there a special reason for that?
Yes, we did. The special reason, there's 2 parts to it. It was what was available in Uganda, which there was quite a big list of flowers that we wanted to use, and we wanted to have this really rich, biodiverse flower bank to attract the different pests and insects. But it was what was available in the region. But then also the main focus of the flower strips was to combat against the aphid pressure, which is probably the biggest pest issue in Kigezi Highlands at the moment. And marigold by itself is really good at drawing in ladybugs to combat this. But also, they've got different properties. Marigolds are good at nematode deterioration, which is quite a big problem with potatoes. Not here in this region, but yeah, essentially it was just what insects can it bring and what was available.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. So if you have a question, you should ask it in the chat, and I will just first in so the first, it's like in chronological order. So the next one is Jamal Norior. Can you open up your mic?
Yes,
So
I'm not sure you hear me.
Yeah.
yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, sure. Yes, it's very good presentation, and also like it's the very like it's the come from the very practical one, but I'm not sure like is the do you have any technical document regarding, for example, how you manage the pits, or how you like is the manage the farm from the maybe like it's the for the extreme weathers, something like that. I'm not sure you have any document to be shared for that.
Yes. I mean, to back up what we did source the information from already kind of trialed work, and decided how we're going to put this all together. I've got a lot of backing documents for that I'll be happy to share. There's also a kind of final report that we also did on this that's got a lot more information of exactly what we saw, if it was soil moisture, soil temperature, the soil-borne diseases, whatever it may be, that I could also share with you after this.
Great, thank you.
Great. So yeah, at the end of this session, there will be the emails will be available also through email, so then you can connect. The next one is Corinne. Can you open up your mic and introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi Bayley. Thanks for your presentation. I'm Corinne. I work with ZOA, a humanitarian organization. I really loved your presentation. I joined a bit late, so I may have missed the first part. I've asked quite a number of questions in chat. I was wondering, based on your experience, do you know if it matters what variety of potato you plant? That would be one. And the second, you mentioned just now in the Q&A that aphids were a major challenge in Kigezi. I know also for potato blight, both late and early blight, but mostly late blight is a very big challenge. Do you also know IPM or CSA measures that can help to manage or control blight?
Sure. Okay, so on the first point on the variety, we actually wanted to trial that out and see if there was any differences with the varieties that we use. But unfortunately, the seed availability is quite low. So we actually ended up planting late. We were really late into the season for this, which worked out in our advantage, because the late in the season it was meant we were going to finish off and harvest when there were no rains around. So it really helped with the results. But we only ended up planting the one variety, and that was unfortunate. I'm not too sure. I'm sure that there would be some traits within the variety that would make a difference, but that's something that still needs to be looked at. And then in terms of the blight, late blight particular problem, I didn't speak about that, unfortunately, sorry. But what we did observe is that there was less instances of late blight within the climate smart plots compared to the conventional or the gap plots that we had. And I would assume that this is now because the plant is going through less periods of stress, it's healthier, it's getting the nutrition it needs throughout the time. Those plants are just a little bit more resistant to pest pressure and disease pressure. And then by also creating this constant living soil with the right soil microbial activity in there, that also fights off these soil-borne diseases that come in. So I think mulching in itself is a very underrated practice that is super easy to implement and has so many advantages. But like I said, I think we would need to do a bit more research into this and how it plays in different environments. You know, if we're going to go to, let's say, the Sahel, how is mulching going to help there? I think more so than in this environment, but it would be interesting to see a bit more.
Yeah, thank you.
Pleasure.
Thank you. Then the next question from Jasper Okello. Can you open up your mic? So his question is, regenerative looks amazing. How long did it take you to see regenerative nature of landscape? So yeah, I think the transitioning, how long does the transitioning take?
Yeah, I think interesting question, because regenerative agriculture really is something that you only see the full results of after implementation of it over years and years and years. But there's some quick wins that you can see. For example, what we've seen right now in just the yield increase, the soil, the moisture that's being retained into the soil, that's almost an immediate result. As soon as you put that mulch on top of it, it's acting straight away. And it doesn't take long for the soil microbial action to come back in. That picture of the earthworm, I've been to Uganda a few times in that area, and I haven't seen many earthworms in the soil when I go and dig. But now, just because we've created a conducive environment for it, it's there. And that was, about, let's say, I think 8 weeks after planting. So if they weren't there in the beginning and we saw them after 8 weeks, we can at least assume that, 8 weeks to see that. But then again, with the beneficial insects, as soon as those flowers started to flower, they came. So all these good activity of these microbes in the soil, the insects, they're already in the environment, but you've just got to enable them to really thrive. But then when it comes to like other regenerative practices, better soil water holding, like soil water holding content, that's by increasing the soil organic matter. That takes a really long time, but it's you'll see results as you go through the practice.
Yeah. So we're talking about weeks already that you can see some transitioning. So that's amazing.
Yeah, for sure.
Then Florencio Merurua, I hope I pronounced it right. Can you open your mic and ask your question?
Yes, you pronounce it correctly. It's Marirua.
Thank you. Great.
Thank you. Yes, I am with a new organization, a local organization called Mãos Unidas, formerly DOCAS. DOCAS, for those who are familiar with DOCAS International. In Mozambique, it has phased out. That's establishing Mãos Unidas as a local NGO. My question is in relation to the planting on the slopes. What sort of measures are you taking to address the issue of soil erosion when you plant in those situations or conditions? Thank you.
Sure. Okay, so what we saw, of course, what should be happening is, and there are old terraces that have been there to stop the soil erosion down the slope, and then you can continue agriculture. But that hasn't been happening in a while. So we work with what we've got. One of the main things we did was to plant the crops. If the slope is horizontally across the slope rather than vertically down the slope, so that any water that's flowing down gets stopped by these ridges. But another aspect was the use of mulch. When it rains, the mulch is like diffusing that impact of the rain onto the soil. So that's a much slower rate of infiltration going into the soil, which helps a lot more and preventing like this sheet runoff going down. So the mulch is a big factor, and then the planting direction was a big factor. But of course, more can be done, but that also costs some quite a bit of money to invest into that to be done. And unfortunately, that's not for most small scale farmers. They are unable to do that. So just these small interventions that we've done is already helping quite a bit. And I can imagine if everyone got onto this, just the mulching, there would be a significant decrease in the soil erosion going downhill. One thing that was also interesting is at the bottom of the slopes, there's a huge overgrowth of these weeds and reeds, and I think that's because of the agricultural practices and the nutrification that's gone into there. So that's a brilliant source to get the mulch from, and then put it back onto the field.
Thank you.
So yeah.
Thank you, Bayley. There are a lot of questions still, and so there is an opportunity to reach out to Bayley by email, and who knows what brings the future, maybe a collaboration. So now we have to go to the next speaker, Janna.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today, and thank you for all the organizers for organizing this interesting webinar. My name is Janna Fleuren. I work at Both Ends, which is an environmental justice organization based in the Netherlands. But we work a lot internationally, and we work with, for example, more than 450 partner organizations, mostly in the Global South. And today I'm here to tell you about one of our programs, the Communities Regreen the Sahel program, focusing mostly on farmer-managed natural regeneration in Burkina Faso, Niger, and Senegal. Next slide, please. Yes, so the Communities Regreen the Sahel program started in 2010 in Niger and in 2018 in Burkina Faso and Senegal. And we work in a consortium. So in the 4 countries, we have a coordinating partner. So that's SPONG in Burkina, CRESA in Niger, and IOD Afrique in Senegal, and Both Ends in the Netherlands. And then in each of the implementing countries, there's also a lot of implementing partners, either specialized in a region or on a theme, such as nutrition or FMNR. And at the core of our program is that it's a locally led approach. So that means that the whole program is built up by all the partners and also the target groups together. So that's the content, that's the budgeting, and the whole process. And also throughout the program, adaptations are being made by all the partners. And on the basis of the program is using farmer-managed natural regeneration, which I will, of course, explain a bit more elaborately in a bit, to improve the resilience of communities and the ecosystems that they depend on. Next, please. To give a bit of background information, and this is, of course, in no way an exhaustive list, and it's always a generalization. But for the sake of presenting a very complicated topic and region in 15 minutes, I've selected a few. And I think most of us, we associate the Sahel with a hot and dry climate. So the Sahel is a bit of the transition zone between the Sahara in the north, and then the more humid savanna and then tropical forests in the south, and it stretches all the way from West Africa to East Africa. And it's known for the high temperatures and quite erratic, but also little rainfall per year. And there's a lot of issues with land degradation, amongst others caused by unsustainable agricultural practices, population growth, deforestation, desertification, etc. And due to this land degradation, yields are quite low, often below national benchmarks. And there's also periodic malnutrition in certain areas. So especially a long time after the harvest that happens. There's a very high unemployment rate, especially under the young populations, under the youth. And also in Niger and Burkina Faso, there have been some recent coup d'etat, and that leads to a lot of insecurity, and also jihadists and other violent groups wreaking havoc in certain regions. also leading to a lot of internally displaced people, which can also cause land conflicts. Then there's also quite a lot of gender inequality. Niger is in the top 10 of least gender equal countries in the world, leading to all sorts of issues also around land use. And all of the above are exacerbated by climate change. Yeah, next slide, please. Yeah, so this is a webinar about nature-based solutions. So I won't only talk about problems, but also come with a solution that we want to show you today. And that is called farmer-managed natural regeneration. And that means integrating trees in agricultural systems, which basically makes it a form of agroforestry. And it's quite an old technique, also native to the Sahel. So it was not newly introduced, it was already there. And what makes it different from a lot of programs where trees are being planted is that with FMNR, farmers take care of the trees that sprout naturally. So from the seeds and the root forests that are still underneath the soil. And then in that way, you actually allow nature to do the work, which makes it very low cost and also low technology, and very community-based. And the goal is to thereby improve soil health, yields, biodiversity, and therefore also resilience. It's of course not the only thing that farmers do, and it's also combined with a lot of other agroecological practices. And that leads me maybe to one of the main points of my presentation, that one technique can never address such a complicated list of interconnected problems. Next slide, please. So that's why this is also called a program and an approach and not just a technique, because you actually have to combine this with a lot of other activities to ensure that it's uptaken in a sustainable way and in an equitable way. So you focus on social, ecological, and economic development. So that means FMNR and other agroecological practices like mulching that we just heard about and composting. We focus on value chain development, mostly of non-timber forest products, such as shea butter, you may know that. We include nutrition training. So if families have these new products coming from their trees and other crops, how do you prepare them in such a way that it's most beneficial for your family? There is a biodiversity and climate focus to do with climate carbon sequestration. And there is an important role for research institutes. So in each of the 3 countries, we have a research institute, part of the consortium, and they've implemented observatories in all the countries where they do demand-driven research. So the farmers say, hey, I've let this tree grow and I'm noticing these and these things. Can you find out what that means, of what's going on? And then together with the farmers, so it's also a form of citizen science, they conduct research to see the effects of the interventions. Another part is also policy advocacy. That's more about the enabling environment. So that is both done at the very local level, national level, but also internationally to ensure that FMNR and agroecology have a place in policy. So that also supports the further spread of the practices. And throughout all interventions, inclusion plays a big role. So that is of women, but also youth, pastoralists, internally displaced people, etc. Next slide, please. Yeah, I've given some examples because it may still sound a bit abstract, but non-timber forest products and value chain development that can be about using local grasses and leaves to make baskets, to sell on local markets, but also they are helped with market access to access a bit bigger markets, about making food supplements and soaps that can be sold and therefore give additional income. Next one, please. Yeah, the second example is about social cohesion and stability. That's about the village committees that are set up in each village, preferably making use of existing local structures and local leaders. And in these village committees, the plans are being made, strategies are being made together. And I think one very interesting example is that in a lot of places and villages, there can be conflicts between pastoralists who move around with their livestock and farmers who stay in the same place on their land. And there's quite often conflict about land. And in these village committees, they make agreements, for example, that when the crops of the farmers are just sprouting, the pastoralists don't enter their land with their livestock. And then the farmers give the fodders of the trees they are taking care of to the pastoralists to give to their cows. And then in return, the pastoralist gives the cow manure back to the farmers to put on their lands to improve the nutrients in the soil. So conflict in that sense then leads to more social cohesion and more stability within these villages. Next slide, please. This is the policy advocacy I was talking about. So in the first picture, you see an advocacy meeting at the local level where FMNR was included in local community development plans. And on the right, you see the team, our program team at the United Nations Desertification COP, where they also gave presentations and held a side event about these forms of landscape restorations. Next one, please. Yeah, some numbers on our impact throughout the years. 140,000 hectares regreened at less than 50 euros per hectare, which is very low compared to programs in which you are planting trees. 800 village committees established and strengthened, more than 80,000 farmers trained in FMNR. And you see that the average tree density more than doubled. Its native tree species also with medicinal uses are returned to the area, and the harvest from cereals and cowpeas almost or completely doubled in these fields as well. And also a major accomplishment was a presidential decree in Niger supporting FMNR, because these policy processes are really long term. So this was a nice outcome. Next one, please. Yes, this is sort of a before and after picture. This is one of the other practices next to FMNR that farmers are doing. These are demi-lunes or half moons. Very low cost and low technology, but you see that the way these are dug, they preserve the water and help the crops grow. The same for the next slide. This is Zai, so it's sort of a similar goal, but then you do it with rows of stones. Next slide, please. Yeah, and I think this picture really tells a story. The soils look quite different from those in Uganda, as you can see, but you see that underneath this tree, the Fiderbia albida, the crops are doing very well, and this is also a tree that is the favorite of many of the FMNR farmers, because well, you can see that they enrich the soil, but also this is a tree that tends to drop its leaves in the rainy season. So then all the crops underneath get enough sun, while it provides the shade, so it gets back its leaf in the dry season. So it provides shade and coolness when it's also most needed. And you can, this is a picture you see a lot in the fields, that underneath these trees, the crops are doing way better than in the open field. Next slide, please. And this is one of the women groups we work with that are getting increased and diversified income from working with non-timber forest products and selling these. And this increased income also increases resilience of these farmers, for example, against climate change. So if a harvest of the sorghum, for example, is lower due to changing weather conditions, then they also have other products to fall back to buy foods or other essentials for the family. Next slide, please. Yes, there's also a youth program for schools. So here kids learn at an early age about FMNR and about agroecological farming and the benefits that it brings. So there's also a lot of collaboration with teachers and other leading and inspirational figures for these kids. Next slide, please. Yeah, lastly, some lessons learned. That's always interesting. What works is that we've seen that an integrated approach like this is essential for our program, and to use local structures and leaders that are already there. This integrated and locally led approach does take a lot of time and commitment and trust. Yeah, it's very time intensive, but if you do it right, it really pays itself out. And the movement building that is not only within the consortium, but also within the communities is also essential. And is the main reason that we've been able to continue our work, even though, especially in Niger and Burkina Faso, some areas have become very insecure. But because we work with so many really local organizations, they have been able to continue the work in a safe way. And finally, the enabling policy environment that I was talking about is also important. It's also a bit more of an abstract process, but as long as policy is not conducive to these agroecological practices, it will always remain difficult to scale up. So that is also an essential part. That also brings me to the challenges that you always encounter. So this locally led and integrated approach doesn't always match with donor requirements. So for example, we had one project within the program that demanded the partners to georeference all of the fields for all of the farmers who sometimes have like a quarter acre. And that took actually a lot of the project time away from doing things that would actually make an impact on the ground. So that is not always an easy match. Gender inclusion and social norms, even though they are an important part of the program, they stay a challenge because there's always seeking the balance between not wanting to change local customs, but also seeing the importance of involving women, for example, or other groups. Around tree species, that it can sometimes be difficult because there's also a lot of cultural beliefs around these tree species, which can be both positive and negative. For example, there's a tree that if you have it on your land, it is said that you don't have any car accidents or traffic accidents. But there's also negative stories around certain trees. So it's not only can we prove that this tree is positive for your yield, but there's a lot more behind that. Yeah, and as I mentioned before, security concerns are always a challenge and something that you need to constantly be aware of and talk to each other about. Is it still okay to be doing our work in a safe way?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it for now.
Thank you. Very inspiring presentation, and especially also your impact about the 50 euros per hectare for regreening, and the 80,000 farmers that you have trained. So amazing work. I had a question. So, what are some of the most effective approaches you have seen to ensure women, youth, and pastoralist voices are generally included in restoration and decision making for the processes?
Yeah, I think, like I said before, it's including them in the design of the program that's really important. And also working with really grassroots groups and local groups that give you the information of the things that are going on the ground is very essential. But it can also be in very small, simple measures, like if you want women to participate, you need to organize a nanny, because otherwise they are busy with taking care of the kids. So it's both really already in the design of the program, but also having your partners be in these groups and knowing the troubles, like or maybe someone needs to cook because otherwise no one else is going to cook for the family, and that poses a problem. So you need to know the concerns of these specific groups to be able to adapt to them. So that is why it's so important that our consortium is so big, and it's the local partners implementing here today. It's that they don't feel so comfortable presenting in English. Otherwise, it would have been them presenting, I think. But yeah, I think those are some essential elements.
Okay, thank you. Then we will go to the next presenter, Ard Lengkeek. Can you open up your mic? And again, thank you, Janna, for your presentation.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Geert, for giving me the floor. It's an honor to present this to you. I'm the last speaker of a series of 6, so yeah, pump up the pressure. So this is an SDGP project for RVO, and it's called Agroforestry Interventions for Uphill Food and Income Security and Downhill Tea Plantation Protection. We started in July 2019, and we're supposed to end at 2024, but we have a few months of extension, so we're well in time. Next slide, please. So it was a public-private partnership. We worked together with an NGO, a tea factory called Sorwate, the cooperative Asopte, a cooperative of tea farmers, who was actually also one of the shareholders in Sorwate, the government of Rwanda, under NAEP, and we were the applicant. DiBcoop conducts ecological business development, and we work with companies to use ecology as a boost for their production. A lot of companies see ecology as a brake, whereas we try to convince them of the opposite. Next slide, please. So to set the scene, it was about downhill tea on peat. Now, peat is very acidic, and tea likes acidic soils. So this tea plantation of Sorwate has been there for decades and has been producing tea, most of them by smallholders, was also a part by the Sorwate factory itself. They had their own plantation, but the bulk was with smallholder farmers. Next one, please. But yeah, things were happening. The tea factory was actually quite successful. So farmers could get a decent income. So whereas normally a lot of people moved to the city, the pressure in the area remained, became bigger and bigger. So the once forested hills were cleared for agricultural purposes. And this resulted in erosion. So we have water runoff going into the downhill tea plantations, and soil getting into the downhill tea plantations. Now, what you would then see that at the boundaries of the tea, then they became higher because of the drainage activities in the tea plantation. And you saw that was once a flat area of tea with water levels at the same level, now changed into some tea plants having more and others having less water. So people were afraid that there was too much water, so people continued to do draining. And when you drain, the water just goes faster through the system. And this resulted in droughts and in floods. And you see one of the floods in one of the pictures. And when tea is waterlogged for 3 days, it dies off. And then you have to replant. And yeah, it starts producing tea leaves after a few years, but to be fully productive, it can take up to 8 years. So the investment of farmers for tea getting lost in 3 days is just, it's just a big issue. And also the tea factory itself wanted to protect its investment. So they have a big factory. They guaranteed offtake of produce from the smallholder farmers. At the same time, if they could do something to assist the smallholder farmers to maintain their supply to the factory, they would be very welcome to do so. So they came to us, could you drain more? And we thought that was not a good idea. So we had some good discussions, and it was just really impressive, how the willingness of the tea factory was to change a practice that has been there for decades, namely drainage, into something else, namely water management. So, next slide, please. So what we did, the project objective, it aims to establish a system in this watershed that benefits uphill food production and the downhill tea plantations at the same time. Obviously, we did a lot more in this presentation, but because you need to have some nice different examples, the organizers asked me to to focus on the benefits of uphill and downhill collaboration. The key elements were there is that we have agroforestry interventions uphill and downhill improved water management systems to reduce this drought and flooding in the whole water catchment area, that we improve climate change resilience, and that we restore ecosystem services. Simply said, in the short, medium, and long term, ecological interventions for more tea, more food, more income for tea and agroforestry farms. Next slide, please. So we set up a PES system where the uphill farmers practice entrepreneurial agroforestry to conserve soil and water and improve their livelihoods. Now, this required coordination and capacity building for the whole landscape improvement. The downhill tea farmers manage water to stabilize and improve their tea production. Now, this required water management structures in the valley bottoms being installed and a functional to rehabilitate the degraded peat marshland so that it would stop the decay. And obviously, this is to develop and implement a strategic plan for the entire water catchment. We have to design, to do capacity development and implement planning at uphill and downhill level simultaneously. Next one, please. So this is the area. We started uphill, a bit higher up in the tea plantation, so it would benefit the whole watershed area below. We couldn't address the whole system. It was quite a big area. Next one, please. The target groups. So main thing was the uphill food crop farmers. They were supposed to plant trees. Then we have the downhill tea farmers that should work on the water, the weirs and the water structures. We would team up with the women groups. Tell you later about that. There are a lot of existing women groups. Sororite, the tea factory, and they have their plantation workers. And we add the family members. I'm not going to discuss too much in detail. I think Janna Fleuren already told in a previous presentation about how to have social inclusion, but we wanted to make sure that it's just not one lead in the family, mainly the men, deciding how to go about. Next one, please. Okay, the project evolution. Now, before the project, small recap. So we went from drainage to water management. We went from downhill interventions to the entire water catchment area. And we went towards profitable economic services with tree planting for farmers for saving production in the downhill tea plantation. We structured this as a PES. So tree, not in monetary terms, but farmers would get trees for free to plant uphill so they could retain their topsoil and benefit from the products from the trees. Now, in the project, while doing, we learned. We soon went from the heavy structures to more lightweight, cheaper weirs. The heavy structures would also sink within the peat. They were very expensive, and there were a lot of small weirs that would be more effective than a few bigger ones. The other change we had, we went from central to decentralized women group-led nurseries. We at DiBcoop, we work a lot with nurseries all over the global south. And we think it's an SME activity. It's a private sector activity. It's not an NGO activity. So what we did is that the NGO nursery became a training center, whereas we worked with women groups that set up local SMEs for the nurseries and for tree provision. We went from overall tree planting towards focusing on the more vulnerable hotspot areas. Yeah, there was so much farmers. We could plant so many trees, so you have to select. And because it's a PES, and the PES also required a return on investment, we chose the hotspots so that the effects were more pronounced. And there was mining in the area, and it's impossible to stop mining, at least not on this project. So we went from soil restoration in the mined areas, which was really something important because it was very destructive, but you can't stop it. So what we did, we planted a lot of trees uphill, just above the mining area, so that at least the water runoff would be less. You would still have the sediments go down, but the bigger stones and the truckloads of sand that came into the T were reduced. And I think this was one of the last things, one of the nice things, because within this period we all suffered from the COVID. Everybody starts enthusiastically, and then things become difficult, and then there's COVID, and you can't get going, and everybody just retreats on his own position. Whereas this was just exactly something that needed good collaboration among all stakeholders. And I'm very, proud that everybody was just teaming up, and we went to a well-functioning, committed, multidisciplinary team. Next one, please. So, just 2 pictures to show that there's no downhill solution without uphill intervention. We wanted to go to those small weirs because they were more effective and cheaper. And as you can see on the right picture, when an area is under serious erosion threat, it doesn't work if you just put a few of these small weirs. So what you would do is you look at the destructive gullies, you think, okay, where does the water come from that ends up in this gully? And there you start approaching farmers to see what you can do to reduce the water flow before you start any restoration activities. Any restoration activities that you do will be immediately flooded away by the next rain. So we had to plant trees. Next one, please. But tree planting is simple. If I pay you to plant a tree, you pay it, you do it. If I pay you to uproot it, you do it too. So how do you make this sustainable? Not going too much into details, but we had the agroforestry family planning approach, whereas we asked farm families to sit together to define where they want to go to. How do they see the development of their farm to make it sustainable for them and their children? So it was a family effort, whereas the whole family sat together, guided our extension workers, and made a plan for their farm. This was adapted from the PIP approach from Rwanda University. Then they made a plan which included trees, agroforestry practices. Then we have the women groups, existing women groups that we trained in SME activities that could raise those trees for the farmers. Next one, please. But then, what tree species? Now, farmers plant what they know and what's available. But they really like Brevillea and avocado. Brevillea and avocado, they consume a lot of water. And you have the difficulty that you set up a pass for better water infiltration and slowing down the water getting to the valley. But it's not about consuming most of the water. And it's also not beneficial, for the uphill farmers because they dry out their farm. So nothing wrong with a few, but you need diversity for a pest. Trees, they deliver different services, different products, but also at different times. So you want diversity to be very effective for a pest. One of the things that we noticed is that the ethnobotanical knowledge was a bit modest. And as a result, the indigenous species preference was low. So it required teaming up with local experts to come to a set of tree species that was acceptable for farmers. But every farming family is different. People were making plans. They were all different plans. Everybody has their own priorities. So we ended up with 3 packages, which contained a number of different tree species in different numbers that farmers could choose from. So at least farmers have a choice, And by providing them a choice, the adoption rate and the tree maintenance rate increases enormously. And to avoid cherry picking, we had multiple years of tree planting. So if farmers would not plant all the trees, but only plant this single Brevillea and this single avocado, which was also included, of course, then the next year we wouldn't team up with them anymore. But this was, in theory, you just want to make sure there was no cherry picking, but in reality, there was no cherry picking at all. So that was good to know. So just give you a few figures here. This is an
Art,
example.
you have 1 minute left.
All right,
One.
that's good. I'm speeding up. Okay, this is just an example from Mali showing, if you do not take care of diversity, what will happen. Next slide, please. I'm speeding up. Yeah, these are the results. Well, you see the 100% target. I'm just happy to notice that we managed to get all the results. Few things take out. A lot of farmers, 1.5 million trees that we made. One target we didn't make because we couldn't train all the farmers in kennel management, but this was not the difficulty. It's not about ticking boxes. It's about creating impact. The next one. Yeah, now this is the one you want to know because, okay, what's about the continuity of the project? Now, we had a delay because the tea factory was sold and taken over by another factory. So we had to explain the whole issue. What is ecological business development? What are nature-based solutions? What is a PES system? And one of the things that we noticed when we were visiting all the other factories from the same owner was that people get loans for land works, for new tea plantation. They get loans for tree seedlings. They get loans for input, free technical advice, technical, everything, but no funding for climate smart tea, no funding for other tree species planting, waterworks and erosion control. So do it from the start to ensure that this is a sustainable exercise. Another thing that is important for the continuity is that we have a PES for the water and the soil erosion, but not for carbon. So it would be very nice if we could get carbon credits to continue the tree planting. And this is a different ballgame that we noticed. We talked with 3 carbon providers, and it's very difficult to get there. The last thing, and I think it's nice to finish with this one, because we're talking about continuity from a higher level, but what's happening on the ground is that farmers also approach their neighbors uphill and say, hey, can you plant a few trees? I'll help you with that. And this is, I think, one of the really nice things. It's very small still. I'm sorry, it still remains beautiful. So people are resolving it themselves without our interventions.
Thank you, Art.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Art. That's such a beautiful presentation and a lot of information, useful information. And linked to your last slide, there is a question also regarding the biodiversity benefits. IUCN NL, can you open up your mic to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, Maxime Eiselin from IUCN Netherlands. I really appreciate the integrated upstream downstream approach to water management. And you also plant a lot of trees, and that's amazing. And I'm wondering, how do you optimize the survival rate of the indigenous tree species? And are there any biodiversity benefits? Do you see animals coming back, for instance?
Yeah, a few questions in one. So by providing packages, people have a choice. Yeah, and if you have a choice, the adoption rate, I don't even like adoption, because how can you adopt your own child in a way? But yeah, people were taking much better care of the trees because of choice. So I think this is one of the things that we ended up with a quite okay survival rate, which was 80%. But yeah, after 2 years. But we've been continuing tree planting, so I don't have the latest figures. We didn't spot animals. There was not. We do like you saw the example in Mali. We can calculate the tree biodiversity scores. So we have some figures for that. But since there were few indigenous species, and from my humble perspective, I do not count exotic trees as a biodiversity value. I would have loved to be more impressive than it is. It's the first step. And we would really like to expand that, because what we notice is that the indigenous species that we that we did include were very much appreciated. We had the local vegetable tree that was very appreciated. And you think, okay, why don't you plant it yourself? It's just around the corner, you can do it. But still, when putting it in the project, it sort of gave it an upgrade, which went very well.
Thank you. That's an honest answer. And yeah, I think there is one more question, but before answering that, I want to announce I will get into the poll so that we can learn from this webinar, the last webinar, and in the future we might do another webinar. So it's open now. Everybody, please fill it in. Then there's one question from Renee. Can you open up your mic and ask your question?
Here, if you just tap it once more, then you have my contact details in the thank you. So people are asking for my contact details so they can take it.
Yeah.
No, it's not there. Okay, sorry.
Okay, this is René from Tipalga in Burkina Faso. Thank you very much. We are trying out also an approach close to PIP, and we want to know more about the outcomes you had with that family planning and the importance on the project and the importance on the families involved in that landscape. Thank you.
Yes, so very nice. We do have projects in Burkina too. So it's always nice to hear. The PIP approach is to ensure that everybody has a say and that the farm isn't directed to just one of the family members, which is often the man. And the difficulty, of course, you have in Burkina, and Janna also pointed it out, that women cannot plant trees because it's a claim on the land, whereas you do want the farm to be profitable for the whole family. And if you start planting trees, and sometimes the services or products come in year two, and whereas, even if the man plants the tree for the woman, it's not secure that the woman can use that same piece of land the next year, because she doesn't own it, and she just have to depend on her husband or the chef du terre to get the tree. So I think it's more the social issues, the local social issues to resolve before you can get into deciding what trees to plant. But I think this PIP approach is good, because if you include some kind of securities for the women to also invest in the land, so that they can get a return on investment in the seasons afterwards, like the mulching or compost provision and tree planting, etc. I think you just have to adapt it locally. Yeah.
Thank you, Art. I hope that answers your question. It's time to wrap up because we have 3 minutes left, and we want to share some information. If you can go to the next slide, Sander. Art, again, thank you for your great presentation. So this is the final webinar. Thank you for joining all, and as you can see on the slide, all the webinars are available on the IUCN YouTube channel. We will be sending the link of the YouTube channel through the email, including the recording of today. This will also be shared by email today. Next slide. This is time to say goodbye to everybody. On behalf of the whole team, IUCN, RVO, the Vrije Universiteit, and Renature, we will really, really thank you for participating, for listening, for learning, for discussing, for presenting. Especially the presenters, they were great, and also the interactions were great. And don't hesitate to reach out to us for any contact information. It has been a pleasure to organize these 6 webinars. It has been a valuable platform to share knowledge, and especially the case studies. I think it's really important for all this climate and biodiversity challenges that we have, to share knowledge and understand each other and grow collective understanding of the challenges that we will have in the global south, but also in the western parts of the world. But yeah, we are mainly discussing challenges in the global south. I hope you found this series interesting and inspireful, and I hope to see you soon in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
It was
very
great.
much.
Thank
Thank
you all
you.
for participating.
Thank you as well.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
And
Thank
all
you
the
very
Thank you.
much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.